Babe of the day. Babe of the day. Cathy Lee Crosby, the tennis star who made it far. She was TV's original Wonder Woman. Yes, there was one before Linda Carter. Cathy became best known, however, as one of the co-hosts of TV's That's Incredible. It's fitting that she was on that show because off-screen, she has to be one of the most incredible women who ever lived. There isn't much she can't do. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Anthony for making the suggestion. It was a good one, Tony. Keep rocking it. Yes, if you didn't already know, I do take suggestions. Is there a woman who you feel should be a babe of the day? I don't just talk about actresses. They can be models, athletes, anything from any time period. I've even talked about a hot dog vendor. If there is a woman you think is worthy of being called a babe of the day, share it in the comments below. Cathy grew up in a show business family, so it's surprising she didn't get into it right away. Her mom was a contract player for RKO. Her dad was a script and songwriter, along with being the Dodge spokesman on the Lawrence Welk Show. Cathy's parents eventually split, with her dad moving to Australia. Tennis became Cathy's thing when she was very young, starting at age 12. She got very good at the sport very fast, and ultimately played at Wimbledon twice. As she got older, she got into a lot of physical stuff just for fun, like skydiving, windsurfing, and swimming. In her life, Cathy has done all sorts of really intense things, like ballroom dancing with tricks and stunts, flying trapeze, flying planes, and even racing cars. Her two sisters were also athletically inclined. While still playing professional tennis, Cathy went to college at the University of Southern California. In 1968, she graduated with a psychology degree. The late 1960s to early 1970s was a rather turbulent time for Cathy, full of its highs, lows, and uncertainties. She got married to Alexander Ingle in 1966. Sources differ, but she was divorced in 1968 or 1972. Either way, it wasn't a long marriage. In 1968, she graduated college. Being a college graduate myself, I can tell you that it's its own kind of headache. She quit playing tennis sometime in the late 1960s. Although it's been narrowed down to 1967 to 1970, I believe it was probably 1968, because this is also when she started her acting career. It had to be a pretty intense time for her. Cathy's first acting role on television was on the TV series It Takes a Thief. She played Susan in the episode called The Lay of the Land. Also that year, and around that same time, Cathy became one of the first Golddiggers for Dean Martin. If you don't know who the Golddiggers are, let me break it down for you. The Golddiggers was probably the hottest, sexiest troupe of singing and dancing women that ever lived. Each one was truly talented. Some were also good actresses and featured in skits. They were created expressly for the Dean Martin show. The famous singer and actor's variety show had been on since 1965. Towards the end of the third season, during the spring of 1968, something new was added. Inspired by the chorus girls of 1930s movies, a troupe of 12 girls was formed. Cathy Lee Crosby was one of the originals. A lot of people don't realize Cathy could sing, but years on down the road she sang backup for stars like Lionel Richie and Dolly Parton. The Golddiggers wore the sexiest outfits and were a big part of Dean's show. They appeared with him and in their own act throughout the 1990s with an ever-changing lineup. Cathy Lee, being 5'8", blonde and beautiful, was a perfect choice for the troupe. But her run as a gold digger didn't last very long, ending sometime in 1969. A lot of people don't remember Cathy as a gold digger, and that's a shame, because in between a tennis career and being a name actress, she was a part of a major TV phenomenon. Dean Martin, in his fancy suits, with all the hot women parading around, was the closest thing to James Bond you were ever going to get on television. The Dean Martin show captured the look and feel of James Bond better than any of the actual spy TV shows on at that time. After that, though, Cathy's acting career went cold until 1972. She returned in a couple of TV shows and, most importantly, her first movie with Call Me By My Rightful Name. This was a drama where Cathy played the leading lady, Anne Chris, who comes between two male roommates. It didn't get big, but it certainly didn't hurt Cathy's career, because she worked steady for the next 4 years. In 1974, she guest starred in an episode of the Shaft TV series. She played Joanna Kirkwood in the episode called The Capricorn Murders. This is significant because around this time, she started dating Shaft himself, Richard Roundtree. I always liked this guy as an actor, and he just got cooler as he got older. The relationship didn't last. That same year, Cathy got what became her first real big role, although at the time, it wasn't much appreciated. Confused? Let me explain. She was hired to play Wonder Woman in a TV pilot movie. What? A blonde Wonder Woman? Just wait, it gets weirder. This was not the Wonder Woman most people were familiar with. It wasn't even what was going on with the character in comic books in 1974. There was a period of time, from 1968 to 1972, where, in an attempt to modernize the character, they stripped Wonder Woman of her powers, her classic costume, and put her in mod outfits of the era. Diana Prince was, at that time, just a spy character. It's odd, then, that in 1974, the TV movie was running with an idea that had been abandoned for a couple years. At least in the spy version of Wonder Woman comics, she still had black hair. Who knows why they decided to leave her blonde? Cathy's Wonder Woman had no superpowers and didn't wear the classic costume. Instead, she wore some funky uniform that covered her entire body. They do mention that Diana Prince came from Paradise Island. She left the Amazons in order to show the world the value of women. Diana gets a job working as an assistant to government agent Steve Trevor, who was played by Kaz Garris. The plot of this movie is that Diana is after a criminal named Abner Smith, played by Ricardo Montalban, who has stolen a set of code books with sensitive information about U.S. government field agents. Smith's chief assistants include George Calvin, played by Andrew Prine, who thinks he's God's gift to women, and a rogue Amazon named Angela, played by Anitra Ford, who works as a bodyguard for Smith. Near the end of the movie, Diana and Angela have a duel in which Diana wins. Clearly, Cathy Lee's real-life athletic ability had something to do with her getting this part. She fought bad guys with karate. The fight with the other Amazon was the major moment of action. This pilot movie did so-so in the ratings, and the series wasn't picked up. I've seen it, and seriously, it's not a bad show in and of itself. I love the Wonder Woman character, the real Wonder Woman, and as with other superheroes, I don't like it when people severely alter what a character is for the sake of a movie or TV show. This movie is not Wonder Woman. However, it's not bad by any means. Cathy Lee Crosby was very cool as her version of Wonder Woman. She did a great acting job. As a matter of fact, this whole movie felt a bit more adult than the Wonder Woman series we ended up getting. This seemed to be more for teenagers and up than for real young kids. It had a good cast of actors. I think that if they called this anything but Wonder Woman, it would have stood a better chance of making it. At the time, the Super Friends cartoon was around with Wonder Woman, and the comic books were showing the real Wonder Woman again, and you just couldn't put this movie out there and expect people to wholeheartedly accept it as being Wonder Woman. The costume isn't the worst, but they could have shown a little more skin. I mean, she was a dancer for Dean Martin at one time. I do think Wonder Woman needed a better costume design. And since she was supposed to be covert, a black wig during her costume scenes would have been a wise idea. For many, many years, this pilot fell into obscurity. Sometime around the 2010s, and after that, a newfound cult-like appreciation for this film developed. For one thing, superhero movies and TV reached their zenith of popularity at that time. And for another thing, they started exploring these alternate realities of superhero characters. So this particular version of Wonder Woman makes some kind of sense. I hate multiverses, so I don't like to look at this movie that way. I just look at this movie as an honorable attempt that just didn't work, but only for the fact that it was so different than anyone wanted it to be. So ABC scrapped this version of Wonder Woman for becoming a regular TV series. However, they weren't done with the character. They decided to go back to Wonder Woman's roots and make her like they should have made her all along. The very next year, they released another pilot film called The New Original Wonder Woman with Linda Carter. I still think Cathy Lee Crosby is great, but Linda Carter nailed the role. She's Wonder Woman. The year after that, it became a hugely popular TV series that ran through 1979. So Wonder Woman with Cathy Lee Crosby didn't work out. But it wasn't really a career embarrassment because it wasn't a bad movie. She definitely deserved acting work, and continued to do so for the next 2 years. From 1976 to 1978, though, there was a dry spell. But in 1978, she came back in a big way and stuck around for a lot of years. In 1978, Cathy became the top-billed star of the basketball comedy movie Coach. In it, she plays a track star and Olympic gold medalist who was hired, sight unseen, to be the coach for a boys' high school basketball team. She's met with a negative attitude from the teenage players, and basically the whole town tries to oust her. But despite all that, she leads a once terrible team to victory, and even finds romance with one of the players. This movie wasn't a runaway hit, but it did alright, and at least it proved, once again, that she could lead a movie. In 1979, she was one of the leads in the horror film The Dark, where she played a TV newswoman investigating a series of grisly murders committed by one of the oddest creatures filmdom has ever produced. This did better than Coach in theaters, but doesn't seem to be as beloved today. After that, she did more TV roles, but got the plum job of her life in 1980. ABC, despite the failure of her Wonder Woman pilot, took another chance on her and made her one of the co-hosts of That's Incredible. This lasted through 1984 for 5 seasons. If you're unfamiliar with this show, it's about people doing incredible things of all kinds. Her other co-hosts were singer John Davidson and football quarterback Fran Tarkenton. This was a very, very popular series, and you'll even hear it get referenced a lot in much more current shows that are set in the 1980s. If you didn't know Cathy Lee Crosby for anything else, you would definitely know her for That's Incredible. She now had definite star status. Of course, being on a hit TV show did wonders for Cathy's acting career, and she was in lots of stuff during and after the show's run, through 1987. After that, though, she took another hiatus from acting. Whenever she took these breaks from acting, she wasn't just sitting idle. Cathy had a lot of other interests and side projects going on. For many years by this point, she had done a lot of charity and humanitarian work for underprivileged children and homeless people. She was even knighted as Lady Cathy Lee Crosby by the Royal Order of St. John, the oldest humanitarian organization in the world. You don't hear about this much because the tabloids don't like to bring up that kind of stuff about celebrities. Anything really positive that means something doesn't make it into celebrity news rags or on TMZ. Another thing going on in Cathy's life at this time was a real nasty split from her longtime boyfriend, the football star Joe Theismann. They became an item around 1983, but by 1991 they broke up. They sued each other in court, ultimately settled out of court, but the whole thing was real messy. Cathy even had to declare bankruptcy because of this. Her grandmother, who she was close to, died, and she also contracted Epstein-Barr syndrome. Obviously, with all this going on, she didn't feel much like acting. It wasn't real easy for Cathy to snap out of all this, but she did. In 1998, she even wrote a book that was part autobiography and part inspirational called Let the Magic Begin. Anyone who is going through an exceptionally bad time in their life will want to read it. In 1992, Cathy came back to the world of acting. It was just a small role, as herself, in an offbeat comedy movie called The Player. Tim Robbins was the star. The movie did well in theaters and with critics, although it's not one of those movies you hear a lot of people talking about today. Regardless, Cathy was able to get into a good, mainstream project right away after a 5-year break. In 1994, she landed a major part in the TV miniseries North and South Book 3, Heaven and Hell. The same year, she got the lead in the Lifetime TV movie Untamed Love. After this, she took a 3-year break, then got major roles in the TV movies When the Cradle Falls and Lost Treasure of Dos Santos. The latter is worth mentioning because it was the first time she was in an action-adventure show since 1984. It's odd that an actress who was physically able to do a lot of things got stuck doing dramas. She did all those interesting action shows throughout the 70s and mid-80s, then started doing a lot of women's shows. It was cool to see her again in something dudes would want to watch. Cathy came back in 1999, again in another TV movie drama called A Memory in My Heart, but followed it up that year with another TV action movie called Final Run, about a runaway computer-controlled train. After this, she continued to appear prominently in several TV and film projects through 2002. Although she was still doing mostly dramas, at least she did one action movie, a direct-to-video film from 2001 called Ablaze. Although a B movie, the number of big stars and other recognizable actors in this movie is incredible. Cathy Lee played such a cool part in this movie, and she ends up getting killed. What the hey? There was a long lapse in acting roles, but in 2016 she appeared in one last movie, the drama Prayer Never Fails. After that, though, she appears to be finished with acting. For Cathy, though, that's not a bad thing because she has a lot of other talents to fall back on. Along with everything else I've mentioned about her, she is also an artist and collects art. And she does speaking engagements, as well as running her own production company, CLC Entertainment Studios. If there was ever a woman who personified excellence and perseverance, it's Cathy Lee Crosby. And that's what makes her a Babe of the Day. Babe of the Day.